Hey everybody, welcome to our brand new show. I'm so excited to be here today with Billy Hallowell, who you all know from some of the incredible reporting and work that he does with CBN News, with FaithWire. Billy, you're amazing. And I've also
Well, you're
got some of
amazing
our,
too.
yeah, thank you, buddy. I also got some of our team of ministers, our ministry team here, and that's John Groves, who's an incredible pastor and evangelist, and Josiah Kennealy, who is a minister to young adult ministry leaders across the country. And today we want to talk about what is God doing? What is happening right now? Basically, what is God doing in the Roaring 20s? And if you don't know, Think Eternity is partnered with CBN News for this show. Think Eternity is we just know that people are overwhelmed with the cares and pressures of life. And so we're sharing powerful faith content, including this show, to help you find fulfillment in God. And we want even believers to get back to their hope, their joy, and their peace. Of course, we love impacting the next generation as well. And so we hope you love this show. We hope you'll share it with your friends and with young people in your life, and that'll be a blessing to them. But we've used this term, guys, over the last few years. I feel like we kind of coined this term in a lot of ways, at least in the ministry world, of the Roaring 20s. And so we're going to just talk a little bit about that, what you guys see that's happening. And, where it really all came from was one of my close friends who's not with us on this show today, but that's Dr. Malachi O'Brien, called me one day in the middle of 2019 in the summer. And he said, "Hey, Matt, I feel like we're supposed to call 1 million young people to fast and pray in the Roaring 20s. And it was this term we had actually heard from Pastor Louis Giglio, who leads Passion Conferences the month before. And as we were thinking about it and praying about it, we just felt like there's something unusual that's going to take place over the coming decade. Of course, the Roaring 20s is a throwback to the 1920s. But we felt that the 2020s was going to be a Roaring 20s in a new way, because we felt that God was going to roar his glory. The Bible refers to God in the Bible as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so we just felt like God's going to just show off. He's going to do something great in this decade. And so even with everything that's going on, we feel like great things are coming. And we did call 1 million young people to fast in the beginning of 2020, going into that year. And that was amazing, wasn't it, guys? I mean, why don't you share a little bit about your perspective of all this as we get into it? And John, share a little bit about what you're feeling for this coming this idea of the Roaring 20s as well.
It was really incredible to see state leaders from around the U.S. and then we had people sending messages from all these different countries, I believe over a dozen countries, that were like, we want in. We want to lead our state. We want to lead our country. We want to lead our city. And watching generational lines be crossed in this digital age for kind of a digital revival service, but 21 days of fasting and prayer was absolutely amazing. And little did we know what was coming on the heels of that. But it was amazing to see that move of God. And I think it's snowballing. I think that it's growing as we move through the 20s. And I'm excited to see what comes at the end of the Roaring 20s. You know, our great grandparents, mine used to talk about the Great Depression, but I believe this is just the beginning. It's like the labor pains. It's like the early sparks of a great revival, a great awakening. And what better way to see that than in this digital information, reach 1 million people with the click of a button age?
I got to ask you a question, Josiah, but I was going to say, just because I love the three of you and how passionate you are. You know, here we are talking about something positive, right? That we believe God can do something amazing, that he has done something amazing through this. And like all of culture is talking about how young people are turning from faith. Everything is falling apart. The world is crumbling. Faith is crumbling. And there are a lot of big challenges, right? But there's so many amazing things. Like, so for you, Josiah, how do you react to that? You know, in light of this positive conversation, all that negativity that's out there about where things are and how it's all falling apart?
It's a great question, Billy. And I think of Narnia, actually. I think of the Roaring 20s, and I just get this picture of the lion, right? Aslan. And I think the young cast of characters that C.S. Lewis depicts, they ask the beavers a question. And they're like, is Aslan, it could even be referred to, is God safe? And the beavers go, who said anything about safe? But he's good. And I think that what is so interesting about the works of C.S. Lewis all these decades ago, and that have now been turned into these iconic movies too, is the young people ask questions. Is God safe? Is he good? And I think that that's what I really see that's actually really great about the next generation of millennials, of Generation Z. And what I actually see is there's such a hunger. Previously, I think there's been a lot of hype, and instead what I see with young adults in our world today, there's a lot of hunger, in that they're hungering for truth. They're hungering for God's word. They're hungering actually for a presence, his spirit, and encounter with God. And then more specifically, I think previous generations have been okay with unanswered or even really unasked questions. And so Generation Z specifically, they're asking questions that have never been answered in the church. And I think that that's really okay. And it's actually really incredible because God, the Bible, and just throughout history, there is answers to these questions that the world is asking and the next generations are asking. And so I think it's a massive opportunity. Anytime there's chaos or uncertainty or pain, that's definitely a problem. And problems always present opportunities. And so I see it as a great opportunity to minister through spirit, through truth, and through answering questions that people are actually asking.
Billy, we've really had a front row seat, like me and John and Josiah and a few other friends. It was so interesting doing that call to fast because we're thinking, who calls 1 million young people to do this? Like, that's a little scary because what if like 12 people join us, And so, especially by the way, to fasting, because previous to 2020, I wasn't a huge faster. I loved praying. I love, the call to a life of prayer, but fasting's like, it's harder. And it didn't seem like there was a lot of material out there for it. And what was so interesting, guys, is that you'd think that would be a difficult call, but it felt like what Josiah is saying is so true. There's such a hunger. Like, people, this sounds like it is a pun, but people were hungry to fast. That was so weird to me. I was too. It was almost like God was gracing a lot of younger people to begin to step into that. And we had no idea what was coming these last few years. We had no idea. We just thought like, oh, it's going to be amazing. We're going to fast and pray. Everything's going to be good. But we didn't know the world was going to change. And we didn't know that the difficulty that was going to come in such an unusual time that it was. And so, and in some ways, in many ways, we're still in like, it's unusual times. What do we keep using the word unprecedented, right? So it's so unprecedented. And so, John, talk about a little bit, because you've had this vision and you've begun to throughout this year hold revival nights across the country. You've been traveling around the nation in a bus and with your family,
Wow.
and you've been holding what you've called Gen Z revival nights. What have you feel like you've been seeing on the ground as you've been talking to young people, as you've been connecting with young influencers, as you've been reaching out across in local churches? What do you sense as you've been doing that?
It's interesting to see the people that we would probably most expect to be excited about things like this. Some have been, but a lot haven't. And it's been the unlikely generation and the unlikely people that have been hungry, kind of like Josiah was mentioning. I remember asking one guy in particular to be a part of all of this. And he goes, I just have too much on my plate right now. And I went, that's exactly the reason why we're fasting. We're getting everything off the plate. But then this Gen Z that's on the scene are really searching for transcendence and answers to questions and thinking about the future and eternal things. They really are thinking eternity. And so these revival nights have been a incredible success in cities across the US and still more to come. I believe this is going to be a yearly thing for many, many years. But pulling young creators and young influencers, and by that I mean the high schooler that is really active on the basketball team, the girl in the community who's involved in all these different things, people that actually have influence in their community, pulling them together and say, let's call this whole city to come and experience a move of God. Let's call them to be dissatisfied with anything less. Let's answer the questions they're actually asking, and we'll ask them to bring their questions to the floor and kind of put us on the spot and see how the Bible applies to everything. And the result has been soul saved at every single event. And our prayer has been for at least 2 or 3 new students at each city to go, okay, how can I do this every month or every week in my city? And every city that we've gone to so far, the result has been a recurring fasting, prayer, worship, and Bible study movement. And so the goal is, let's see that in every major city across the US before the end of the 20s. But the present day exciting thing is it's happening. They're finding answers, they're searching. And when these local churches go, yeah, we volunteer, we'll be the place where they can feel safe to ask the questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. And those churches are growing, and it's been exciting and awesome to see.
Billy, you have a unique perspective because you're really a face to me of like Christian media and all the stuff you're doing at CBN, all the stuff you're doing at Faithwire. You're sharing the stories of what's going on in the world, and of course, there's a lot of negative stories that come out these days. But what do you feel about what's happening in this season in history? Are we moving into good things? Like what's your perspective on all of it, buddy?
Yeah, it's this weird dynamic where, and I think we see this scripturally too. You talk about prophecy, we can go down that line, but you're watching the world reel right now. You're seeing so much chaos, as we were talking about earlier, whether it's COVID down the line, right? Violence, you talk about North Korea and China and these horrific things that are happening, but at the same time, you're also seeing these revivals happen. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that idea that you can be having revival happen at the same time that overarching chaos is going on. But yet I think we see that. You look at a North Korea, right? And I get a chance to cover a lot of these heartbreaking stories where Christianity is not allowed. China, Christianity is being restricted. Churches are being bulldozed, but yet Christianity is flourishing in all of these places. And we've seen that throughout the history of faith, right? That Christianity actually does really well in times when it's disallowed or Christians are being mistreated. And so we have that dynamic going on, and there's all this light that a lot of us are missing because maybe we're not seeing the positive headlines. We're not seeing what is going on, people standing up for their faith. And so it's been really interesting over the last 10, 15 years to consistently be able to, cover the hard things that we need to talk about and be aware of, and that overarching sort of chaos that Jesus tells us to expect. But as you get deeper into it, seeing these amazing moments of revival. So I love hearing about these young people who are showing up, and they're craving truth. And we know that that's what's happening. We can get obsessed with the statistics showing us that Christianity, nominal Christianity, is on the decline. Okay, but that's just the name. That's just saying you're a Christian. What's actually going on in our culture? And I think that need points us toward the need for us to get out there and do the work that you guys are doing.
Billy, I remember hearing about a study that came out just at the beginning of the pandemic being declared. It was like a month in, and they said that in the UK, like less than 1% of people attended a church. But because of like everything moving all of a sudden to online, and like every church was scrambling at the beginning of that to go, like if they didn't already have a strong ministry online, they were trying to make sure everything was streaming and things are going, and trying to figure out like how do we keep the giving going, and get people set up digitally if they were doing that. And I remember hearing a study that said like literally 30%, more than 30% of the UK was attending church online after that first month. So one of the things that we have this unique vantage point to see between our group of friends is, yes, there's events, and yes, there's like, the local church, but we see so many young people that will throw up like a faith video on TikTok, or they'll throw up, something over on YouTube or a platform, and they will just see such an astronomical impact of these pieces of content and of sharing their faith that just like, I don't remember who shared this recently, but it was just saying like just compared to like the crowds of Billy Graham back in the day, like young people are reaching this vast amount of people, and many of them don't know how they're going viral. They don't know why, some of them are learning, like, how to make sure they're making an impact there. But a lot of times it's just like, just organic, just young people just putting themselves out there, sharing their faith in God. What do you guys see in Josiah, John, as you're seeing this? What would you advise to young people who want to make an impact, with their life? They want to, like, and it's interesting. It's like there's a balance here, right? Because, like, there was also a study that said like 50% of Gen Z thinks they're going to be famous someday. So, like, it's not, the goal isn't to, to go be viral. Although, like, I think a lot of young people feel that tug. Like, it's just the time that we now have social media on all these platforms, and you kind of can share something silly and go viral. But, like, how can they make an impact? What advice do you have to them?
Man, I think of my friend Sam and his story the past couple years. We met at a conference for college students, and he actually recommitted his life to Christ after one of the evening messages. There was an invitation, and we prayed together that night. And over a year goes by, and he moved from out of state to Minneapolis, and he DM'd me because, you know what? Like, I think I was one of the only few people in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities where he was going to move that he knew. So we grabbed coffee. So I would just advise, like, never underestimate a single DM or text. Never underestimate the power of one coffee. And I remember leaving coffee feeling discouraged and worried, concerned for the faith of this young guy. Like, and we started praying. He found a local church. We started meeting together regularly. And I watched as he would come with questions to every mentoring session. And through the course of, like, he got out of a bad living situation. He found a local church. He actually started with his roommate a young adult ministry, and he is being hired this week at the local church that he found as his home church. And now he's being hired because he's just been so bought in. Him and his roommate started a Bible study for young adults that now is more of a mid-sized group. Like, over 100 young adults are coming, and he bought a house, and his roommates are all young adults who are hungry in the faith. So I just think of 2 Timothy 2:2, of how we faithfully entrust what we've learned from Paul or Jesus or Timothy, and we entrust that to other disciples who are going to go and make other disciples. So I think, yes, it's online, and it's also in person, and it's just one relationship at a time.
John, what
Matt,
do you
it's
advise to a
interesting.
young person who is just, just want to make an impact with their life? Maybe they're seeing some success, what would you advise to them?
What's interesting that you called it organic growth. Like, they don't always realize why some of these things are happening. The growth of Christianity has always been spread organically. That's the Great Commission, person to person. And these videos that explode digitally explode because they're answering a question a generation is actually searching for. And my advice is, go to where the fish are. We're called to be fishers of men. And some people are content to play the game at the fair where you drop the line into the tiny little pool of ducks. And that's like fishing in Christian circles. Maybe that's the definition of Christian influencer of a previous generation. But the next gen is going, I want to reach my friend who is a hardcore atheist. So I'm going to study up on this. And as they're studying, they're sharing what they're learning. Go to where the fish are. And not just digitally. Digitally is great, and we're reaching more people from the pulpits of our cell phones than some of our heroes preach to in physical pulpits throughout their entire ministry, and that's a great responsibility. So study to show yourself approved, rightly dividing the word of truth. Then go to where the fish are. Glorify God, fulfill the Great Commission digitally and in person at local coffee shops, at your gym, at your school, at your job. And the closer you get to truth, the more the truth makes free. And the more freedom you discover, the more you want everybody else to be free too. And it really is a Holy Spirit snowball effect. And I'm excited about the students that are getting excited about that.
It's so weird. I'm going to age myself, but I mean, I was doing, high school ministry and then the college ministry before there was social media. And so for me, it was just the old fashioned way. Like, I'd invite friends in my school to go to youth group with us, and they'd hear the gospel. I just had such a passion in my heart. I think that's where it all starts. It's just this passion. Like you want to do something with your life for the Lord. And so Billy, I made like a newsletter for kids that came to see you at the poll, for kids that came to the Bible study. And I'd write and I'd publish and I'd try to create content. Like before it was really like the word content creator, but it's just so amazing now who you can reach and how God can use you. So you have
was that on actual paper
moment. Yeah. Oh, actual paper. I'd mail out a newsletter.
Wow.
It was just like interesting. I've been doing this from the beginning without realizing it. And Billy, can you talk about this for a second? Like, because you write about in one of your books about like the spiritual battle, right? That the world has and that we all face. What would you say to like a young person who like maybe they don't realize like when they go to like start trying to make an impact, they're going to face a spiritual battle?
Yeah, I think a lot of churches, not all, there's a lot of great churches who handle this issue well of evil, and the fact that, you look at Ephesians 6, we are in a battle between good and evil, and I feel like a lot of us have just written that off. Like we don't want to think about it. We only want to think about the good. We only want to think about, which obviously Christ in his sacrifice and what he did for us, that's the core of it. But actually understanding that we are surrounded by this battle between good and evil, it points us back to our need for Christ. And so when you go into the battlefield not realizing you're in a battle without any of the tools you need, it's really hard to do well in that battle, right? You can't really win if you don't know you're in a war. So that's important to understand. I'd encourage everybody to read Ephesians 6, really process that, and, understand that you're going to be up against different challenges, that the devil is real, that evil is real, that, we may face those battles and those issues, but also I don't want us to get so discouraged, right? I think there's so much negativity, as I was talking about at the beginning, like, oh, things are so bad. Christianity is dying. Oh no, what are we going to do? Culture's in chaos. Well, guess what? Yeah. Gen Z is really the most confused generation. Fine, we could pull all those numbers out. They're dealing with the most mental health struggles. But guess what? That means this is a right playing field to reach people because they have questions. There are more questions, as you guys were saying now, than there have ever been probably in our lifetime, if not ever before in American history, maybe. I don't know. Lots of questions and a lot of needs that we can meet. So we need to understand the evil, understand that it exists, but also see the opportunity in the midst of all that.
Yeah, I feel like we can see so clearly, and we're all seeing it. God's truth is still like meeting needs. It's still touching hearts. And so you just share the truth that you're seeing from your church, from God's word, as you read the Bible. If you see a good content that someone shares and you share that with others, it can dramatically change someone's life. But just know that like a lot of times when God's going to use you and something's going to happen, you're going to face some challenges. And it's probably like you're probably experiencing the spiritual battle that Billy writes and talks about. And so you're going to experience a little bit of that. You're going to experience some, people who are critical of you. You're going to experience some of that. But what you do is just continue to really grow, like John said, and God's word and knowing God's truth. But you got to also run together with some other friends. And this is what we've done as a ministry. This is what I encourage you to do. Find friends in your city. Find friends in your church and run together with others. This is something I've always had on my heart since I was young. I think I just said I'm not young, Billy. Is that what I just said? I don't know there.
You did say you were aging yourself, but I mean.
We need to find people like the guys on here. You need to find people that really love the Lord and want to make an impact with their life, and you got to run together with them because there's just nothing like that. But that's what's going to keep you strong. That's what's going to keep you strong in the journey. It's going to be one of the main things is find friends to run with, and that's going to be huge. Any last thoughts from you guys for today's show?
Matt, I don't know if I shared this with you, but several years ago, I preached a sermon to my church and I retranslated a verse that the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are arguing with each other. And that's the John Groves translation. And I preached about how we need that community and we need friends, and ministry is so much more fun and effective with friends, but I didn't really have many. And it's like a week later, I get a call from Dr. Malachi, and I meet you, and everything clicks, and we've been running together all this time. And I can genuinely say to our friend that's watching, ministry is so much more fun with friends and effective with friends, and it will get hard, but the threefold cord, not quickly broken. Two are better than one. You need friends. And if you're looking for some, here we are. We'd love to be your friend. And we're excited about doing ministry with people that want to reach people. And it's so much easier when you're running. You don't have to agree on everything. We agree on Jesus. And since he's our focus, we don't have to see eye to eye. on everything because we're too busy looking at his eyes and seeing what he wants. Ministry's more fun with friends.
I'd just say this, that if you've stuck with us for this whole conversation and you're watching right now, there's clearly a fire that's in your soul. And so daily you might encounter loneliness or isolation or discouragement from the world around you, but I just really encourage you to fan the flame. Keep going, stay hungry. Like John and Matt and Billy are saying, like, find friends that you can cheer on and collaborate with and who you can encourage when they're down, and they can do the same for you. And I would just say, like, keep fanning the flame. Don't give up. And if you are lonely, like, pray for those friends. If you have questions, find some godly mentors or community from generations that have gone before us and just approach them and ask for their time and ask for their ear and their wisdom and insight. And God's going to use you powerfully as you're continuing to be filled with faith to fan the flame that God's given you.
I love that. Fan the flame that God has given you, and not getting discouraged when we see those negative stats, when we see that chaos, realizing that there's opportunity on the other side of that. This has been an incredible conversation. Love that we're getting to do this. Excited to do it with you guys. Appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you again very soon.